All right, here's George. I'm very glad you won that fight, Matt, but I'm not impressed by your performance, and I look forward to fight you in the near future.
So we're finishing, well, we have finished up essentially the second week, or the second week of the finales of Future State so far. And I don't know, I feel like, I think we've been sold a bill of goods. Like, I don't feel like DC Comics has been completely honest with what Future State is, what it represents, and whether or not it's something that's important. And here with me to discuss that is El Percherino himself, the Pooh Buff Comics. Perch, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm just confused. I'm confused by everything. We knew that some things were leading into Future State, specifically the Batman stuff and maybe some of the Superman stuff. But I'm starting to get the impression that this isn't just some willy-nilly possible future for DC Comics that may or may not happen. I'm starting to think that almost all of it is happening. And yeah, Infinite Frontier.
I mean, I think I think the clue, I think we talked about this at one point before. I think the stuff that is more near term that you're seeing is definitely going to happen. I think that's where it's matched up with writers and where they're going, and you see a lot of seeds. And I think that's true certainly for the Batman family of books, you know, and probably a handful of others. I think Green Lantern as well, and Wonder Girl, Yara Flor, Wonder Woman. But then you have other things like the Superman Worlds of War and some of these others where it's more the distant future. And that I think is, you know, unless it's wildly popular, I don't see that connecting the dots. Or if anything, I see maybe some of the writers, if they're sticking with the title, doing similar things like Jason Aaron's doing, where they flash forward to the future from time to time in their ongoing series to kind of reveal what's going on there. But it is, I think it is all based on reader reaction. If the fans and the customers like it, there will be more of it. It will definitely connect. If it bombs, they will not. Now,
well, we know it hasn't bombed. It's actually done quite substantially better than even DC anticipated.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, which is such. I've done a few videos, and man, everybody gets pissed every time I say this. You got to understand the nuance, people. It's not doing great. It's doing better than DC thought it would, which is a very carefully worded statement. I think DC expected this to be a dumping ground for a number of stories and things that were pitched for 5G. They wanted to reclaim their money and just put some stories out where they bought themselves some time for March and kind of this bigger relaunch and other changes they're making. That's what they were doing. And so I think their expectations were very low going in. Then combined with that, when they first started announcing this stuff, whether it was Bleeding Cool or social media or YouTube channels, a lot of the fans took the piss out on all the books. The reaction was very, very negative. So I think they had set themselves for this is not going to do very well. I think retailers in turn heard this and they tended to under order. And so all of those things combined meant that fan interest and customer interest, they came in, maybe they saw the covers, who knows, but the customers bought more than they thought. The customers in the actual shop were not quite as negative as they are on social media and YouTube. They bought stuff. The retailers who had ordered, say, 10 copies of something quickly sold out. That led to reprints. And so DC is looking at this going, hey, this thing did better than we thought, did better than anyone thought. But doing better than anyone thought doesn't mean, hooray, fireworks success. It just meant, you set your expectations low. You hope not to strike out, you get a single. Okay.
Well, we are seeing the first few things we're having roll out of it. One of them being Wonder Girl. Obviously, that one's actually going to take a step back in time. We're going to see Yara Flor leaving Themyscira, returning to Brazil, kind of to her roots and discovering herself. But we are getting Future State Gotham. The first story arc is going to be Joshua Williamson writing this Red Hood, essentially being employed by the magistrate to hunt down the Bat family. So we are getting ongoing tales from Future State, specifically in Gotham. And it certainly appears in the pages of Justice League this week that we are going to be getting a Future State Justice League team.
Yeah, I think that I think that you're going to see, because there is a stronger reaction to some of these books, I think that's absolutely why you're seeing Gotham come out like it is. It's for exactly this reason, and they're hoping that they can keep it going and get a couple of these titles in. And I think there's a potential we'll see more, and I think we'll see other shuffling. I think, and again, I have no way. I actually have talked to a couple people at DC, and I've got two completely separate answers, which is a totally different problem. Is Swamp Thing ongoing or a limited series?
I understood it was limited.
In March, it's listed as a limited series. In April, it dropped that and just said number 2. I asked, did something change? And was told, yes, it's an ongoing now. Then I got a follow-up response that said, oh, no, it's still a limited series. It was a mistaken solicitation. Your guess is as good as mine, folks. But I know that Swamp Thing Future State was critically acclaimed. People liked it, thought it was a really good book. And so I think that things like that are going to lead to certainly some changes. Things that were limited series may not be. Books like Future State Gotham, all these things will happen. And the line continues to be in flux, but definitely it's an interesting mix. I think for people who are hoping that Future State would be one and done and go away, no, it's clear some of those elements are going to continue. But they're continuing largely because the fan reaction was stronger than expected.
I'll be honest, my reaction to Future State has been Swamp Thing's really good. I like the new Wonder Woman. Everything else is average to below average, except for a couple titles. But specifically, like if you look at the end of that Flash book,
yeah,
like that is some bleak. Like you shouldn't feel bad about yourself when you finish reading a comic book.
I mean, it's funny. I haven't hated, outright hated many of the Future State books. I did really dislike Flash. I don't like what they did with the character. I don't like for a lot of reasons, I really dislike that book. I haven't loved many of them either. I did think Wonder Woman was fine. I did like Swamp Thing a lot. I thought Justice League was probably better than average, just in that first issue. So I think it's been. I've liked a lot of the backups. Honestly, I thought some of them were good. I thought some were terrible. It is. I'm with you. It's very much okay. It felt like a holding pattern, and I don't know if some of these books that were just kind of average, if now they're going to be ongoing plots, that probably is not a great thing for me, but we'll see.
I would have put Future State in the rear, but it doesn't feel like that's happening. And it's not just Flash that's having these bleak, futures. We just had the Teen Titans book and Shazam, and
yeah.
Tell me we're not getting this, 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse thing coming into the DC Comics. It's obvious that it is happening. It's spread out over multiple titles. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I mean, it is going to be an interesting mix. Unfortunately, if you're a betting man, I try not to be negative. I like to just let things play out. There's a couple things working against them, though, here, if you're just being analytical about it. Almost all the comics are, as you say, they're ending bleak. They're ending down. Where do you go from down? You can't have everything be down. It's like, a different conversation I had. You can't constantly deconstruct. If you deconstruct all the time, and never build anything, pretty soon you run out of things to deconstruct. You're just left with a bunch of pieces all over the floor. And a lot of the Future State books do have a very negative down ending to them. And that's going to be a problem. And then second, if a lot of these books were intended to kind of be one and done and kind of out the door at one point, and then we were going to kind of move on, but now fan reaction is slightly stronger, so we're going to dip into some of those things. It means a lot of writers are now going to be changing up their plans. They're going to be trying to incorporate some of these elements in maybe to some other run. Some of the writers are continuing, but a lot of others are moving on to other titles. So now they're going to have to pick up some of these elements, and they deliberately just sparse the timeline out with Future State. Some things are happening like 5 years in the future, some 1,000 years in the future.
40.
It's all over the place. So now you're going to have writers who are trying to incorporate these elements. Like, well, if you're a writer and your Future State story was like 40 years in the future, what are you supposed to do? Like, it just, a lot of these books start to make very, very little sense when you pull them all in. And so I don't know. Please don't make the mistake, DC. It just, tell a good story. If it just so happens that some element of your plot from Future State is something that enables you to help tell a good story, great. But otherwise, just focus on telling the great story first, get ongoing readership, first, and then, see what happens. But if there's a mandate suddenly to like, hey, this thing was popular, quick, incorporate them into your story, like that's going to be a mess.
I really wish this was Dark Tales from the Dark Multiverse Future State. And then they could, if they want to continue off, you just do those Tales from the Dark Multiverse, and you don't have to affect like the regular series, but it doesn't feel that way. But in your opinion, this is not, a planned effort on DC Comics. They've accidentally fell into what they could be considered a modicum of success, and they're trying to capitalize on it. But going into Future State, they were like, yeah, we're going to have this Gotham series, this next, this next Batman. Let's plant the seeds for this and this, even though it now appears that they're going to be dabbling in this Future State world while trying to relaunch the DC universe.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think the big exception to all this is Tinian and the Batman books and Tamaki coming on. I mean, clearly, even before Future State hit, they were leading up to the Magistrate and all the rest of the stuff. So this,
yeah, we met Mayor Nakano.
Yeah, that definitely is something that they wanted to dip into. But I think beyond that, yeah, I mean, I don't think a lot of this was a giant plan. And it's funny. I know that there'll be some people irritated kind of on both ends by me saying that, but I don't think this was a well-planned piece. And I mean that neither negatively nor positively. I think that their intention was, like we talked about, you had some Future State, you had some 5G pitches and angles and stories. And we've heard that directly from people. I mean, I've heard that directly from Jeff Thorne, who I interviewed, that there was a pitch and then it got kind of condensed and put out for Future State. And now it's leading to kind of this ongoing book. So we know that there are some plans that shifted around. And so I don't think that what we're seeing is this, careful orchestration of a lot of pieces coming together by any means.
Yeah, I don't know. It feels like a misinformation play, but I think it might just be DC Comics they're going through this weird period where you have all these new people, and I think they're just going through a transition period. They just aren't getting the information out. But I will end it on this. I had one of my viewers had a comment in a video recently, and he said, I think one of the biggest regrets of DC readers, in 2 to 5 years is going to be that they ever purchased anything that said Future State on it, because they're not going to stop now.
Yeah, they're not going to. That's true. I mean, definitely, if you hate all of this, if you are not interested in Future State, you didn't want to see it continue, you want to see it end, your dollars are going to help it continue. But frankly, that's the way it should be. I think if in this weird way, I definitely want to see people who buy things. I want to see books that get sold be continued. I think that is how it should be. So.
They made money. You gotta keep going. I want to see the rest of. I want to see that Aquaman story, but in like 24 issues.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah,
that's what I want to see.
That's and that's a whole other factor of all this. Is there's some stories in Future State that, frankly, this is like the monkey's paw kind of thing I'm about to say here, but they would have been better if they would have been 4, 6, 8, 12 issues rather than 2. Like some of these stories, it should not have been condensed into 2. They needed more room, and I think the Aquaman story is a perfect example of that. Like there's more that needed to be done there. Now, of course, be careful what you wish for. They could decompress that thing out and wreck it. So I don't know.
Get the Ultimate Universe.
Yeah.
Should go on for 8 years. So I don't know. We shall see. Perch is saying it's not an elaborate plan. It's no misinformation. It's probably DC just trying to get their footing and having some accidental success. Obviously, we are going to be seeing some Future State here going into the future. I am not very enamored. I'm hoping to put Future State in the rear view, but that does not appear to be the case.
Yeah. Look, I mean, in comics in general, whether it's DC, Marvel, anyone else, and I say this with love for comics, it's always a safe bet to assume people aren't planning well. I mean, if the last 30 years have taught us absolutely nothing, this is not a well-orchestrated planning industry. And so people stumbling into failure, stumbling into success is pretty common.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.